Hello and welcome to Running Your Stories episode 13. We are joined this time by Rachel Ann Cullen, the author of Running for My Life, a terrific book telling Rachel's story about her battles with mental health throughout her life until she really discovered running, and running changed her life and has really moved things forward. So we chat a little about the book and we talk about Rachel's philosophies in life and what you would recommend to other people, and we hear about Rachel's story beyond the book. So it's a really fascinating episode, a conversation that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think that we touch on some very important topics and some very meaningful things. So I hope you enjoy listening to this episode. Let's get into it. Thank you. Welcome, Rachel, to Running Your Stories.
Hi, Kev.
Hi. Thank you
for having me.
Thank you very much for coming along.
It's my pleasure. Not far. Not had to come very far.
No, it's great. I was out for a run with a friend of mine a few months ago, and I got chatting about the podcast, and he mentioned your book to me, actually.
Right. Infamy. We've got it, infamy.
It was actually because we were chatting, and he started telling me, kind of just got to know him well enough, and he started telling me about how running had helped him with confidence and anxiety.
Yeah. Okay.
And I started sharing about myself as well.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned that his wife had bought your book and he'd been reading it.
Right.
So that's how we got onto the subject. So I guess before we keep saying your book all the time, we should just
yes, I am familiar. That is the one.
Yes.
That's the one. That's correct.
Yeah.
That
so
is me.
yeah, Running for My Life.
Yes.
Which I would recommend to everybody that's listening. It's an interesting.
Your five is just in my pocket. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So do you want to give a little of the background to the book and what it's about?
Yeah, it's my life story, in the sense of my journey to, I guess, mental well-being. I took the long route. I didn't go via any sort of shortcut, which would have been infinitely easier. I tended to struggle through my childhood. Had a mum who had manic depression, and I then started to exhibit the same traits through my teenage years. Went on a path of really struggling to know how to deal with that and how to even identify with it. Lost a lot of confidence, not that I had much in the first place. Ended up going down the road of sort of comfort eating, feeling alienated from sports, fitness, that kind of thing. So running really wasn't a part of my life at all in any way. And I guess it's a story of how eventually the discovery of that impacted on me. And it accumulates in the goal I set myself of running the London Marathon. Whilst I was pregnant, actually, with I've got one little girl, and when I was pregnant, at that point I'd been on Prozac for 12 years to manage my depression and bipolar disorder, and I had to come off that medication at that point because of the pregnancy, and I needed something to really give me a massive surge of self-belief, something on which I could base my own belief that I could manage my demons, or do something to try and put something in place on the other side of pregnancy. So it was during the pregnancy I entered into the ballot for the London Marathon completely naively. There's quite a funny story in there of how I entered not only for myself, which is really naughty, so don't do this, and I didn't understand. I had no knowledge whatsoever of the process for entry into London. And so I entered for myself, my mum, who was at that time 68, my partner, my sister. It was just, there was you just shouldn't do that because you have to obviously register and have ID and things. But it's the story of how I did get a ballot placed miraculously, and that sort of changed the course of my life, including my mental health struggles and my ability to manage it. So that's probably a rather roundabout way of answering your question, Kev.
Yeah. Well, I found the book very interesting, which is why I contacted you, as well as you being local, knowing people that I know as well. So I think we're both part of the same running scene, but maybe just on the opposite edges geographically, but not far apart at all. And as I say, first heard about your story having been out running and having a chat with a friend about how running's helped us.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot in the book that I could relate to.
Yeah, and I think it would be my guess that in to a greater or lesser degree, you know, not everybody does struggle with mental health issues in the way that I have done. Not everybody does have the experience of going on mental health medication, for example, or being diagnosed with something like bipolar or body dysmorphia, for example. But we all have struggles, and we all need something to help to navigate our way through. And just before we began recording the podcast, you and I just had a very brief conversation about parenthood, and even the ability to manage the stresses and strains that come with that. You don't need to suffer from mental health issues to struggle with the challenges of parenthood.
Absolutely.
And I firmly believe that even without my backstory and the real emphasis on the inherent struggles, you know, that were within me throughout my childhood and beyond, even just the point at which I doubted my ability to become a parent and to cope with the raft of pressure and expectation and responsibility, without the mental health element, even that alone would have been enough for me to justify writing this story, because actually it's helped me to manage that, and I think to become a better parent than I ever would have believed I could be. And even that, I set my standards very low on that, to put it into context. But yeah, just the journey of parenthood, you know, if nothing else, take away the mental health aspect. I think for all of us, you know, within, whether you're in a running club, or I was a lone wolf and I wasn't in a running club up to the point at which this story ends. But I believe we all share some of those same struggles.
I definitely agree with that. And I think one of the things that I hear from people that touches on one element of that is that some people describe running as being selfish.
Oh, I've had this.
Yes.
I
find that horrendous, actually, when I hear it.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a good thing to touch on with yourself, because I, as you say, I'm a parent. I've got 3 kids. I've got a full-time job.
Yes.
I also volunteer at Mountain Rescue.
Yeah, and you do this.
And I do this.
Yeah, and you do some serious running events.
And I do quite a bit of running.
Yeah.
And I help out with football coaching a bit as well.
Yeah.
Which is at least doing stuff with the kids. And people, and I do occasionally sort of have a date night or whatever with my wife as well.
I was going to say, and you still have a relationship, do you, Kev? Is that right?
Just about.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, and so, you know, some people do question whether running is selfish.
Yeah.
And I know at the point when I started to I keep saying sort of get back into running, because I did some reasonable amount of running in my youth. I started describing it as being adult fitness and adult exercise, because I used to stand in the middle of the football pitch with the kids, or have a kickabout with the kids, or go for a walk with the kids, but it isn't actually
that's not
really maintaining your health. And it's physical and mental health.
Yes.
And in the past, I used to do rock climbing, was kind of my adult escape kind of thing. But that wasn't actually doing enough for my physical health. It was great mental health wise, but not good enough physical health for the pressures of time, and it's difficult to do that in the dark, and it's difficult to do that when it's raining, and so actually it ends up being quite stressful at times, because you can't do it when you want to do it. Whereas since I've started running, you find that actually running in the rain isn't as bad as you first think. And
gonna get wet, and that's probably as bad as it gets, really, isn't it? You might get a bit cold.
You're gonna get wet. You're gonna get a bit cold, but you put a pair of gloves on or something.
You know you're gonna get wet if it's raining. You're going out, and then you sort of you're okay, aren't you? You're able to.
And once you buy a decent head torch, running in the dark's quite fun. And so then you end up running through the night and doing all kinds of crazy things.
Right. Not quite gone to that extreme myself just yet.
Yeah, I have also told the story, I don't think on the podcast, but a number of years ago when I was at work, we were doing one of these training to coach people for sort of managers kind of courses, and I ended up sat with my boss role playing coaching things, and we got onto this exact topic about doing exercise to keep yourself healthy.
And is it selfish or not?
And he said, but it feels like it's really selfish because it takes time away from my kids, and I feel like I should be doing stuff with the kids. I says, but there's another way of looking at it. If you don't keep yourself healthy, you're not going to be around to spend time with them.
This is a fundamental I've got very strong opinions on this. And it's quite a key point, I think, in my own story, because when this goal was massive for me when Tilly was when I was expecting Tilly.
Yes.
And I knew that it was going to be a huge. I'd never run a marathon before. I'd done some running before, but I knew it would be a massive goal to get from giving birth to the start and the finish line. Not just the start line. You've got to get to the finish line of the marathon 7 months later. And I knew it would take an awful lot of time and commitment, but I had all of that commitment and that drive, and it was almost like an overwhelming, a non-negotiable need to do this. And I think, and I was accused by some people of being selfish, some people who were very close to me, at that time, which it can sting a little bit. And there were times when I actually stopped and I did think, and I did honestly question, and I thought, actually, is this utterly selfish? Am I being a selfish, self-absorbed person with this goal? And every time I thought about it, the honest answer was, I can't be, because the alternative for me of resigning myself to some kind of place where I knew I wouldn't be the person that I could and should be without this goal, and without, say, in terms of payback, 1 hour of running on a Sunday morning, you'll get me 10 times. You'll get tenfold the mum that I would be. You get tenfold the partner, tenfold I'll clean more effectively. I'll make a better Sunday lunch. I'll do all the things that I would have done, only I'll do them with that spring in my step, and with the endorphins swimming around, and it's the payback. It is,
and I found that directly in my work, and I can actually measure it in numbers, which I won't talk about on here. But in the past, one of the reasons I started getting unfit was because I was working long hours, sort of anywhere between 45 and 60 hours a week, and now, since I've sort of really got into running, I've cut my hours right down to more like normal week, only about 40 hours.
And I'm guessing you're more effective in those hours.
And I'm more effective. I get the sales things that I'm involved in, I get more sales. I now get paid more because I get better results. And I work less hours, like you say,
I'm laughing, but it's working smarter, not harder.
And as you say, that drive that you end up having, that some people would see as selfish, it's a case of having some priorities in that place. It's, leave aside for a moment whether it's the right place or not, but you have some priorities in that place and some priorities in that place, and overall you have a balance. And that's the thing that I've become to recognise, as I say, and I can prove it in monetary terms and results from work, that instead of working 60 hours, say, I might train 12 hours and work 48. And actually I earn more money, I'm happier, I'm healthier, and I have exactly the same amount of time for the family. Because
and it is
I was working that time before.
I think where I really struggled, and unfortunately the impact for me was huge. It was some people may be able to relate to this, but if you are with a person in your relationship who doesn't understand that and who doesn't get the sort of the input versus output of the time, energy, commitment, and what that may give you and the family back, it is a balance. I fully understand it's a balance, and it's one that I struggled to find that equilibrium throughout that, particularly throughout that 7-month journey, because it was such a steep learning curve, and it was always going to be, because how else are you going to get from giving birth to running a marathon in a short space of time, when you have literally, you're counting down the weeks to the various races and increasing the mileage, etc. And I think at times I did, it was a huge impact, without a doubt, and I think it would be unfair to say otherwise. And there were times when I'm sure it must have felt like it was a really self-absorbed thing for me to be doing, but I look back now, I've been able to, the story finishes at the London Marathon 2011. My story just started. That was when it just began. That was so the end of my book, ironically, is when my story started for me. And had I not had that commitment and that just innate desire and drive to see that goal through to completion, I would not have lived the subsequent 8 years that I've lived, and that to me is unthinkable. So it proves in every single way, from my work to my my writing. I'm doing things I never believed I would be doing in a fitness context and otherwise, and all of it comes down to that commitment and that drive for the 7 months that at the time seemed ludicrous and sort of disproportionate and possibly selfish, but I look back now, and my daughter will have a book that's dedicated to her when she's old enough and interested enough to read it, and she'll understand that journey and what that meant. So for those who at the time did accuse, and they know who they are, and I've been accused of things since, because I think there is that drive in all of us, that otherwise we wouldn't be here having this conversation. But for those people who didn't see it at the time, it's my hope that they would now look back and understand why that was so important to me. And like this morning, why it matters to me to be up at the crack of dawn. I'll go and do a treadmill session. Yesterday, get up at crack of dawn. I'll go and do a run at 7 a.m. Because that sets me up for the day. And for those who don't get it, I accept they don't get it. That's their thing, and it's not mine. Exactly,
and I think.
But it's sort of, I guess it's respecting other people's views, and
it is. Yeah, I think. Well, the thing I find difficult to understand is people that reject all forms of exercise. I find that difficult to understand. I try to understand. I try to leave them alone with that view. But I can certainly understand if somebody prefers cycling or prefers swimming or prefers running. That's absolutely understandable. Because we're all different. I don't get the
swimming thing because it's just cold. But other than that, I'm with you.
I don't know. I was starting to get into a bit of outdoor swimming last year. I was quite enjoying it.
Right, well, I'll leave that one to you then, because
I'm really no good at it. But it's another reason to get outside.
It's horses for courses, and I think. To emphasise too, my story, it is relatable, I think, to non-runners as well as it is to runners, and it could be that, it could be anything. So it could be, the desire to take part in the, there's a swimming this serpentine, and the swimathon and all that kind of stuff. There can be cycling. There are a million different goals you can have, but it's just having that, finding your thing and going with whatever that is. So I'm like you though, but I guess I'm more empathetic, not than you are, but than other people may be, because I understand how it feels to be alienated from sport and to not feel as though it's something I can take part in. I understand inherently how that feels, and I know how devastating and isolating that feels as a young person.
Which was the other thing we touched on just before we started, about same as you've described in your book, about being the one at the back with the fat kid. That was me.
Yeah.
On the school cross country and things like
God,
that. I was always second last.
Yes, I was second to last. I was never the last.
Yeah, I was never last.
And I know the name, and I won't say the name for obvious reasons, for many reasons, but I remember the name of the one person who would come behind, the only person that would come. Yes. I know her name to this day. But I would be the second to last, and I remember the whole sort of torturous experience and feeling like the eyes of the school sort of somehow feasting on this horrible sort of cruel parade, in these god-awful gym knickers in the freezing cold, because it was always freezing cold, around the fields of sort of North Halifax. And I know how that felt, and I can still put myself back there now, and I gather that you have a similar kind of...
and actually that was one of the things that drove me to get involved with coaching kids football. I ran my eldest son's team for 5 years, and the part I most enjoyed was actually when he was younger, because it didn't it was more inclusive and less about winning matches. It was more about getting all the kids to play. And there were so many kids that came along that had absolutely zero confidence. And had always been told by everyone, or lots of people around them, probably not everyone, but lots of people around them, you don't know what you're doing, you've got 2 left feet, and all the sort of usual cliche things.
And I think sometimes it doesn't even have to come from a cruel place. It can come from, you can end up with that label even with the best of intentions. So for myself, it was never that I was, I had parents and teachers that were very supportive and loving and caring, and it was almost like I was sort of gently encouraged to do what I was good at, which is the academic side of things. And studious, you're very studious, Rachel, you're really good at academics, crack on, do your exams, but don't worry about the sporting thing, because it's not your thing, is it? It's not for you, is it? And that's not done in a hurtful way, but actually when it sinks in over years and years, and you believe that to be the case, it's very damaging. Because
one of the things that I've heard and sort of looked into and believe in is if you're told you're good at something, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy as a young kid. And I was thinking of an example to use actually in the conversation, and I remembered I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I lived in Botswana at the time.
Oh wow!
Which
you should write a book.
And we were on safari, and 2 of my school teachers were taking 2 families on safari. And one of them gave me the compass and said, "Oh, you can navigate the next part." And I said, "Actually, I don't know how." And he says, "Oh well, you're really good at maths and geography. You'll be good at this." And from that day forward, I could always navigate.
And that is a brilliant example, and that is superb actually, because it's almost like, well, of course I can do that. And
because my 2 teachers both said, "Of course Kevin can do this. It's exactly your kind of thing."
And it's similar for me.
So I could.
and it's similar for me, and my thing was exams. So for me, it was almost like this presumed thing. And I remember helping my older sister, she was 4 years older than me. I remember helping her out with her studies and her homework and things. Really, when I was significantly, there's a big difference in, and I'm no genius at all, but it was almost presumed that I just could pass exams, and I never failed one. Because it was just this assumption, and like you say, you're told, of course you can pass your 11 plus, because there isn't any doubt anywhere lurking about that's not going to happen. And from that day forward, lo and behold, I do a significant number of exams, right through to sort of legal qualification and beyond, and I don't flunk a single exam. Because it's in my belief that's not going to happen, and as hard as some of them were. So I think it's very, very true. It
is. I think some people get mixed up with, because obviously some people you can still do this in the wrong way, and that you can. It's not about telling kids, "Oh, you're brilliant at this," if they're rubbish at it. What it's about is saying you can be brilliant at it.
But also for me, it's you can take part.
Exactly.
And I think one of the big things, there's an extract in the book, and it's the story's continued because why was it was never going to end. You know, of course it was always going to continue, but the extract I put of my daughter doing the junior park run, she started that when she was just turned 5, and she is my daughter. She's my she has, you know, whether it's nature or nurture, she has my inherent sense of self-doubt that I had when I was her age. From a very young age, I was very self-aware and doubtful of my own right to just be enough. You know, there was always that inherent level of self-doubt and self-awareness, and she exhibited the same. And I remember the first few times we'd go to junior park run and she would be sort of fearful, and it was a fear of being unable to be good enough. And what if I can't run 2 laps of it's the park just up the road from here, what if I can't run 2 laps of the park, Mummy? You know, what if I can't do 2 laps? And I'm over the months and the weeks, months and years, she sort of pushed through that fear to the point where she's now 8, she's done 54 park runs, she's got a ultra marathon park run band, and it's no longer even on her radar that she's not able to take part. She presumes and assumes her right to be there because she can take part. And recently she did a cross country, she's chosen to be in the cross country team at school, and she ran with a group of girls who were in the year above her, and it didn't frighten her. And for me that was so symbolic because it showed me that all that the weeks of just that belief and instilling that belief that she can take part in activity and sport, and she can do the junior park runs, and she's got a right to be there. And it's not about PBs, we run, we hold hands, we have a chat, you know, it's hard work. Sometimes she feels a bit that, you know, that bit of a sicky thing at the end, and you know, but she's getting used to that, but she can be a part of it. So for me that's huge because it's turning on its head my story and writing a new one and creating a new one for her. So I think you're absolutely right. It's not about and I don't blow hot air up her backside. I'm not there saying to her, oh, she doesn't win, you know, she doesn't win the race. She's not some kind of we don't have a Paula Radcliffe in the making, but we do have a young girl who I believe will be strong, fit, and will partake in sports because she feels like she can. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not there going, you know, I've seen kids crying on the route round because the parents are sort of dragging them and, you know, kicking them in their arses and stuff, and I think that's unnecessary and unhelpful. But it is about that, of course you can do this, and as long as it takes you to do it, not a problem. Push yourself, learn to try hard, that's fine. You know, it's okay to want to go for a PB, that's good, that's great. If you don't get one today, if you've got a sniffly nose or whatever, fine. But it's just that balance of inclusivity, and it being a part of her normality, I think, which is so important. Yeah, I completely agree, because once they've got that sort of foundation level of, you know, of some level of ability there, and have the confidence, the knowledge, then they can choose what they want to do. And they really will be able to achieve it because they've got that foundation. And I think it's transferable too. So I think and it's like running for me. So the analogy with the marathon, in my mind, as I look back and reflect on this, if I was able to complete that marathon in that time scale, within the 7 months, regardless of the time I did it, if I was able to do that, in some way it proved to me that I was up to motherhood, I was up to the task. And there was some level of that one demonstrated the other. It demonstrated my commitment, my ability to dig deep, my mental resilience, all of those things. So I think they're transferable. So it's not just about the running and what happens there. And like with the children, as you're saying, if they have the inherent belief that they can take part in sport and it's something that isn't exclusive for other people, they can then you know, they'll try new things that are unrelated to that sport. They might try, you know, climbing, you know, they might try
skeleton bob, for example,
whatever.
Which, you know,
but I think it sort of bashes down a wall or some walls of you know, of fear
Yeah.
And I do believe that's transferable. I think that's one of the things that running has done for me. It's proving to myself, if I can set those goals and achieve them and just do that on a continual basis, what else can I achieve?
Yeah, and that's exactly how it's helped me, because one of the things that I've always struggled with anxiety, which comes from a lack of confidence or self-belief, and I've always tried to, over the years, to fight it head on, which leaves you feeling very anxious. It doesn't always help.
And I'm not even sure how you do that. How do you even...
Well, like having a fear of heights and doing a parachute jump.
Oh yeah, so
that's fighting it head on.
well, I understand now. So I can relate to that, because in the body dysmorphia thing, one of the things that I had to do as part of the treatment for that was called exposure therapy. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that's the same thing. So really, whatever your fear is, you go out there and actively go
take it head on. Whereas, and one of the things over the years, as I've got older and sort of got more confident and developed, and I have quite a successful career, despite this, not because of, and one of the things I was still struggling with a lot was sort of rejection of ideas. Put ideas forward at work, and you can't always put them across correctly, and so they were often dismissed just because of the way you presented them. But then it's difficult to present them because you're anxious, because you want them to be accepted, and so you're in the circle all the time. And that's one of the ways that running has helped me specifically, different to other sports, in that with running, I find it such a contradiction. It's a very social sport, because you can go running with one on your own, or you can go running with 100 people, or 55,000 or whatever. And so it can, it's a kind of strange contradiction. But your choice about how fast you run, how far you run, whether you get out of bed to train or not, which trainers you put on your feet, it's all your choice at the end of the day. Lots of people can offer advice, and you can have trainers or not, not have personal trainers, but even that is your choice.
Yes.
And everything about it, and that's what I've found really it's really helped me, is that in the short space of time that I've sort of become focused on running, I've achieved similar to yourself, I've achieved way beyond what I ever thought would be possible. I kind of, for myself, I always kind of thought, okay, one day I might run a marathon, but I thought there's lots of people that run one marathon once.
Yes.
And that's not the same at all. And in the end, when I ran my first marathon, which was September 2017, so only just over a year ago.
Okay, wow.
4 weeks later, I ran my first ultra.
Right.
It was just very much a stepping stone.
We need to talk about this.
and this, and so that it's just such a different. It's totally blowing away your own preconceived ideas about what you're capable of doing, and that's actually why I've gone for the longer distance stuff rather than speed, because I've just found it so interesting to keep. Basically, I'm still testing myself. Well, how far can I go?
And also the thing I love, and I'm totally with you on that, but the thing I love about running as well is, naively, in my absolute ignorance, and admittedly totally ignorant, I wouldn't have had a clue, and I didn't have a clue how to train for a marathon. I had no clue whatsoever of the different types of running, or the different, the nuances, or even from a mental perspective, not even mental health. You talk about it can be a solitary activity, it can be a social activity. Even amongst a group of runners, or amongst a race of 55,000 people, you can still run very much on your own, and you can choose to do that. And so and in a group scenario, you can choose to have a chat, or you can fly for the front, or hang off the back. It's entirely within your choice and your control. And I think even the distances, people often misunderstand, and non-runners, it used to make me laugh. They'd often say to me things like, "Oh, a 5k it'll be a piece of cake for you, won't it? Because you do marathons," and they don't understand the difference in the types of running that there are. And like yourself, you now know what the distance is beyond marathon. You know, what does that consist of? What is the difference mentally? How do you prepare for that? How do you sustain your mental strength as well as your physical strength for far beyond? I've entered the Comrades for next year, so I'll be doing the Comrades ultra marathon in South Africa. It's one of the things that I want to do.
How far is that one?
56 miles.
It's a good distance.
And it's the up route. Every year they have, you know, it's the same route, but they do it in reverse. So I was hoping for the down route, but it's not. It's the up one.
Up's more fun.
But you know yourself, and other runners will appreciate the difference in the different distances. So it's not only the social or the sort of, you know, the more insular, reflective, solitary aspect of running. You can choose, and your personality type.
Yes.
You know, very often I can be sort of overwhelmed with noise and chatter and things, and sometimes, most of the time, I am a lone wolf, and I do like to go and do my own training in my own way, in my own time. You know, that said, did Sheffield Hallam Park run at the weekend with a load of people who we met the night before. A very sociable event.
Yeah.
The two are very, very contrasted, and I can enjoy them both.
Yes.
But I think for every personality type, for every you know, there's something for everyone. So the 5k, you know, you might be very good at speed, but you struggle to get beyond the half marathon distance, but
Yes.
you can kick ass at a 5k. You know, for me, I struggle more on the shorter, faster stuff than I do on the longer endurance stuff. So I think there's such a wide spectrum of challenges, physically and mentally, to take on, and it's literally like going into a sweet shop and taking your pick. You know, do I want to do a big race? Do I want to do a small local one? Do I want to do sort of an event further away from home? Do I want to do it with a running club and get on a bus and I'll go to Filey and do whatever? Take your pick, because running, it's not linear, and it's not a one size fits all. It fits it can fit everybody depending on what you want it to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's again, as I mentioned to you just before we started the podcast, that's actually one of the messages we're trying to get across in general on this podcast, and have people on that run different disciplines and different distances and things, for exactly that reason, that we believe that running is a very inclusive thing, if you want it to be.
and also and it's okay to have your own choice. So for example, for me, I'm no longer in a running club. It's my choice. It worked really well for me, and I loved the time that I've been in a couple of clubs and been a part of, and met some great people being part of the running club, you know, locally, and people no doubt know of me for that reason. But it's my choice to sort of do my own training and my own racing in a way that...
I'm in a club, but I actually rarely run with them. Because it's similar.
And I think some of it comes down to personality type. So for me, I don't need the motivation. I just don't need it. So at one point, when I'd just done the first marathon, I didn't know where to go with my running from there. I didn't know much about it. I was very naive and very sort of lacking in any knowledge, really. And I was on my own, and I was coming out of a relationship that was with someone who just inherently didn't understand why I would be interested. So I needed that support network, and it worked for so many of those reasons. But once you sort of throw yourself into the mix, and you're doing race after race, and you build up your knowledge, and you work out what you love and why, you know, I realised I don't need the motivation. I don't need to go and talk about the weather and the day that I've had with, you know, so running is very much, it's my time on my terms, I guess.
Yes.
And some people sort of say, oh, are you no longer in a running club? And don't get me wrong, it was fantastic for the time I was there. And there are times when I think, you know, it may be that I'd like to go back and do some more things, and to push myself again, or to just learn some different routes even. You know, that can work, but you know, just for now, it's something that you know, again, it's horse for course and people's choice.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, I'm in the club, but I've probably been on I only joined them in April, I think. I've probably been on 4 club runs and worn the club vest for 2 races.
Yeah, I always used to get told off because I'm such a strange animal, I guess, and a little bit of a, I sort of make my own rules up really, which is a little bit naughty, but I used to get told off because I did some races when I was in the club, still a member of the club, and I didn't wear my club vest. And I remember on a few occasions this caused a real stir.
Right.
And I just remember thinking, hang on, I know it's not a big deal, but me and my sort of stroppy, God only knows how I had a legal career, because I don't do rules very well, really. I don't do sort of authority and rules greatly. And I just remember thinking, if I want to wear another vest to do this half marathon or this race, I bloody well can do. Yeah. But actually, there are other people who are like, oh, you're in a club, so but that's it's not a big issue. But it's just funny because with my personality type, I'm a bit like, just mean sort of, I'll almost go out of my way then to not wear. I'm such a belligerent sod that I'll sort of go out of my way then to just not wear the club vest. So there are a few people who may or may not listen to this that they might sort of reflect back and think, oh God, I remember having that issue with that sort of non-club vest wearing thing. Anyway. I think if you're in the club championship, then I can understand it. And the times I've worn a club vest is when it's kind of local races, and I know there's a dozen people from the club going. Yeah, of course. I'll wear the vest. But I did the Hardmoor 60 about 6 weeks ago. I'm wearing a vest for that. I wear the right technical clothes that I want to wear. Yeah, but that's in another. That takes it to sort of a you can be forgiven for wearing what the hell you like. For that
I'll wear what I'm really comfortable in for that kind of race. Yeah. And in fact, for the White Rose Ultra this Saturday as well, I'll be wearing what I'm comfortable with. Yeah. In fact, there's a group that I'm in now of ultra runners. That's not a club. It's more of a it's a social group for ultra runners. Right. So it's not. There's people from at least 8 different clubs in this group, and I'll probably wear their T-shirt for the race.
Yeah. But that's cool because it's your choice, and and actually, who cares? It's one of those, isn't it? Get out, run, enjoy your running.
As I say, for the people who are interested in the club championships, then definitely.
Oh yeah, and actually, this is and I am that lone wolf. I am a bit of a maverick, and I do sort of make my own rules up. I know that about myself, but I fully understand as well that a lot of people who go along to the club, their natural instinct and their personality type is very different to mine. So they may go for the more social aspects. They may be, drinkers with a running problem and all that kind of stuff. That is fine too. Yeah. I think it's just a case of respecting each other's.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Whether it's personality types or, what people want from the running. To some people it's their social life. Yeah. It's their friendship group. Yes. It's their support. It's their sort of thing to do on a Tuesday, Thursday evening with a getting on a bus with the club vest on a Sunday. That's their thing, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah, and for other people, it's not. It's more of a it can be more of a solitary thing, and other people like me can just crack on and I did work out years ago that my mother always told me that rules are made to be broken. Which is a great thing to be told by your mother. Yeah. But I actually worked out over the years that rules are there for people that don't understand why the rule's there. Once you really understand the rule, and it's the same for lawyers, so I think you'll probably agree with this. Once you really understand why the rule's there, you don't actually need the rule anymore. Yeah, I get that.
So you can truly understand how, when is the right time to ignore the rule if you fully understand why the rule's there. Yeah. So the rules are there for people that don't know why the rule's there. Yeah,
and it's the most ironic and ridiculous thing in the world, sort of me having been, gone down this sort of very, very sensible sort of academic route with this ultimately going down the legal career and things, when actually the real me, you could never have predicted that the real me would be the person that, I don't want or need a sterile, a very carved out, linear professional career. That's not what ever would have done it for me. That's not what makes me tick at all. And I discovered this a good decade ago now plus. But you know, you would never have believed that from the person that you know people saw growing up. You know, it literally wouldn't have been feasible or foreseeable, perhaps, that the real me and the person that I would ultimately become would get so much joy from being outside, being autonomous, you know, having my freedom to do my running, my riding, my writing. You know, who would have believed that I'd be on to book number 2, and all the stuff that's come on the back of telling the first story. So my life is so far removed from that would perhaps have been expected or predicted, and my personality and who I am is so different, and what I love to do is so far away from the person at one point I believed myself to be. I think it's got to open up other people's minds to the possibility that, you know, even with their own children, you know, be open to the possibility that they may love something that they don't love now. They may end up being somebody that they don't appear to be now, and it's giving them the freedom of the possibilities, I guess. So for me, the running was, and it could have been anything else, it could have been another sport, it was the catalyst for a discovery of what I love. And guess what, it's not been in a sterile legal career, it's not been 9 to 5, or it wasn't 9 to 5, it's not been sort of 7 to 7 in a law firm in central Leeds or Sheffield. It's being autonomous and free to enjoy my days as I choose to live them, and that's been the biggest discovery probably from that very first marathon.
So one of the things I did want to ask you after reading the book, and again we touched on it beforehand, was about where your running's gone since then.
Okay, so just out
of interest.
Just generally, how long have you gone? Because it went quite a long way. So I did that first marathon in 2011, and then just got the bug massively. And I'm really trying to condense this because I don't know how long your listeners want to hear this saga, and it is a saga. Got into my running massively, joined club, and that was brilliant for me at the time. Made some new friends, found that there were other people like me who got the why, who understood why I would want to get out, you know, the head torch on all the rest of it. And then I began to just do loads and loads of races, just bag loads of half marathon was my distance, so I would do loads and loads of half marathons and things. And then I entered into the London Marathon again because I wanted to go back, because you've got the bug then, so you want to go back again. And then in about 2014, that was for a good couple of years, so just loads and loads of races, loads of running. It became a massive part of my life. Then my daughter was very young at the time, so it helped me massively through those difficult early years when they sort of they don't talk back, and it's all very sort of like awkward and a bit like, what do I do with this, you know, little crawling thing in my front room. And then come 2014, my fitness just rocketed, and I started to get a lot faster with the times, and that I think came about. There were a few life changes, you know, at the time. You know, I was separated from Tilly's dad, and I found this real liberation in just being able to celebrate my running and all the years, you know, that I'd put such a lot into it. And I started to get times that surprised me really, taking sort of, you know, age category prizes, and I was in the top 20 female finishers in the Yorkshire Marathon 2014. That remains my PB. Started getting good for age into London, did the Dubai Marathon, and then just started to sort of overcook things. I was doing back-to-back races at weekends. You know, there'd be a 20-mile race, then I'd do the Great North Run the week after, without any recovery in between. And I talk about this. I had a great interview for Run Compod, and we talked a lot about this actually, the fact of not knowing when to run slowly as opposed to when to do your speed work, just always pushing the envelope when it's unnecessary. And I think it became a bit of a chimp then that sort of began to eat me up, so it turned into more of a negative thing. for me. And then in the start of 2017 it all fell apart and I began to suffer from overtraining. I had to pull out of a Dewsbury 10k in the February 2017 and just my legs didn't want to know anymore. And that was devastating because I'd worked so hard and done so well, and then I literally fell off a cliff with it. And then I had to sort of find new ways of discovering my fitness, managing my mental health, chimp, all that stuff. So I sort of had to start again. For a short period of time, maybe 6-7 months, running just wasn't a part of that. So I was doing yoga, I was walking everywhere, I got my bike out of the cellar and started to sort of ride that, and that's where the story sort of continues, and that's going to be a big part of the next the book that I'm writing now, which is what happened when I lost running, and where did the story go from there, and what was next. And then I ended up doing a lot of things on the bike that I never would have anticipated. So I've done a couple of duathlons now, I cycled across Costa Rica, I'm doing the same, Vietnam to Cambodia in a couple of weeks time, and the whole sort of being a beginner again with the bike and learning from scratch, and you're starting on the old heavy mountain bike, and then you're starting to progress and you learn a little bit about the different types of riding you can do, and chucking that into the mix along with the running, which has thankfully come back, has been, I think, a real blessing, because otherwise I would never have had to discover other forms of fitness and other things that make me happy, like running did. So I got very well. For me, bearing in mind I couldn't run for 10 minutes on a treadmill at age 16, I got really quite good in comparison to my poor levels of fitness as a youngster. And then I lost it, had to do something else, then it came back, and I guess I'm learning to enjoy it again. And I'm loving my running again now. And I'm in the London Marathon next year, so I'm doing that. I've entered the Comrades, so I've got that will and that love for my running back again. But it's balanced now with the cycling and the riding, and I did the Kielder duathlon the other weekend, and I was first lady into the first transition, lost a bit on the bike, and then clawed a few places back. So just again, the way this journey, nobody's journey is a constantly upward trajectory. That's not the way life happens. So in losing running and having to rediscover something else, it's sort of opened up this new world of possibilities where running is still a massive part of that for me, but it's not the only thing that I can get joy from, and it's not the only thing that validates me, and at one point I believed perhaps that it was, and it wasn't the answer in itself. It was a part of my discovering of my own answer. So the story's very much continued, and really it makes me laugh because where that book finishes, it feels like my real story began. So it feels like there's a lot more that has happened subsequently.
Well, definitely look forward to the next book.
You might have a bit of a wait. It may be out in early January 2020, but I've got 6 months to write it and things. But I'm loving doing that because, again, it's perhaps more from a cycling perspective and the loss of running and the mental health side of things and how did that impact on me. But it's a story that I believe is worth telling again, because it's about, you think you found the answer and you think you've sort of nailed it and you've suddenly conquered whatever the thing was that you're struggling with, and actually sometimes a curveball happens and it's something different. And maybe you've not dug quite deep enough to search within yourself.
And I think like you say, you feel at times like you've conquered something, and I don't think it's ever truly conquered, and it's about having those coping mechanisms for when you come, like you say, things come round again.
And for me, I think it was the realisation that the running didn't validate me. And I remember I did the Dubai Marathon in 2016, and you know, for a number of reasons, not only, least of all, the heat and the travel exhaustion. We were having to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to the starts in time, etc. I didn't get anywhere near my PB, which I'd done 3:16 and then 3:17 at the London Marathon in the April, and I was way off that, and I really took it hard. I berated myself for that, to the point where I was out the next day running on the front in Dubai on legs that felt like glass, that were broken, that were damaged. There's no question they were damaged. And I think for me, when I look back and reflect on how cruel I was on myself and what running had become to me at that point, the realisation that that was so unhealthy, and it was a place that I never want running I never want it to be that for me again. It can't be something that I use to punish myself because it's never quite good enough, or I'm never quite there, or I never quite get, you know, you cannot just constantly expect the PB after PB after PB without just taking a step back and thinking, actually, even logically, you know, I didn't get that time because of travel, because of the heat, because we'd trained in the monsoon over here when the Ellen Bridge got washed away. I mean, it was like, there were a million reasons, but unfortunately for me, the running was something that I used to both to validate myself, and it was an unhealthy thing at that point, and I had to learn from that it wasn't it shouldn't have ever become that for me. I have to say, I'm consciously trying to not get into that trap myself, because I know, because my sort of journey in running really started when I'd been out to the Alps with some friends to try and climb, and find out I wasn't fit enough, so I came back and I started doing parkrun, and then I started getting a bit faster, and then started, you know, trying to push myself and looking at trying to get PBs every week, and then I found that actually, you know, what is it, I thought about, well, what is it that I actually want to get out of running, and kind of luckily around the right time I got the ridiculous idea of doing the Spine Challenger, which is ridiculous on every level,
which is ridiculous, but that actually really helped me to break out of the PB thing, because there is absolutely no way I could go there with any kind of competitive, because it was in 12 months I went from running 10 miles to 110, and so there's no way you can in 12 months run 110 competitively by any stretch of the imagination. I was literally hobbling across the line at the finish, and so again, once you've hobbled across the line, and it took me 3 months with a lot of physio work to sort of be myself again, you then think, well, you know, why am I doing this? And I had a fantastic experience then, and that was around the time when we started the podcast, in that the first event or race that I did after sort of recovering and thinking, okay, I'm ready to try something now, I did the Oldham Way Ultra, which is 40 miles, and I went along to that with the aim was to purposely not go fast. Don't go fast, because what I'd done wrong in the spine, which was I'd done one ultra before that, but that was my first sort of real proper ultra, and I'd gone off really fast, got caught up in all the excitement, and just broke myself, you know, horrendously. And so I was like, just go along, run at a comfortable pace, chat with some people, and enjoy yourself. And if you're still feeling good with 5 to 10 miles to go, you're allowed to race. That's what I told myself. You know, did
you stick to that though? Because for me, if that were me, because I've tried this stuff before, and I'll say something like that, and I'll give that to myself, but then I just won't listen to my own advice. I won't stick to my own sort of commitment on it. So if you were able to do that,
well, I had the most amazing experience in that we started running the race, and I started literally right at the back, and I moved my way through the field, and I was just looking for a group of people to latch onto to slow myself down to make sure I wouldn't just go.
Yeah.
And the route itself, it's marked. It's the Oldham Way.
Yeah.
But it's marked more for walkers than runners, and so you can lose a lot of time navigating if you don't know it. And I spotted a group that seemed to know where they were going and had really good discipline on pacing. They were walking all the hills basically.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll just go and see if I can run with them for a bit. And so I met a lady called Fiona, who I'm now good friends with. We ran together for over 7 hours.
Wow.
And she knew the route like the back of her hand. And it's episode 2, I think, on the podcast, where we tell the whole story and tell Fiona's story, because she'd been really training. She wanted to finish first lady in that race, which she did. She, an hour ahead of second lady.
Wow.
She did really, really well. And by the time we got to the finish line, 5 of us crossed the line together in second place.
Wow. That's an incredible story.
And it was,
and I can tell by the way you say that your memories
and
just
it's just that I had such a good experience with that, that's helped me to be more disciplined. Yeah.
And like you say, to break free from, I think, I had a chat with Tom Williams on Marathon Talk about it. It's all about this obsession with outcomes and the obsession with PBs. And I think it's there's a balance to be had, and we all enjoy getting the PB. And everyone asks a runner, oh, what's your marathon PB? What's your 5K PB? All that kind of stuff. And that's fine. But I think when that gets lost to the point where, as you've said, you've lost your enjoyment and your love of running and the why you're doing it. And if it only becomes about that, that's such a sad thing, and it's such a shame. And I think whatever you need to do to keep a hold of that love of running, because it's too precious to turn into something that's just basically a shitty stick to beat yourself with. And I think if that's what it's becoming for you, which it did for me without question, towards the end of 2016, the running was becoming more of a punishment than it was a pleasure, because of my own sort of levels of self-imposed sort of pressure I'd guess. And I think it's whatever it takes. For me, I was fortunate in that I had no choice but to have this conversation with myself and to rediscover and to work out how to get that back and what that looked like for me. But where you have the choice, I think it's really important to do what it takes, and whether it is like you've done, is to just throw it all out of the park and say, right, okay, I'm going to do this incredible thing. It's so far away from even what I can conceivably do myself in my running. How far away is that from park run? And park runs are hard because you can race a park run and work really, really hard and chase a good PB on those. But to do what it takes to, like you say, manage your pace, be able to think about the mental aspect of it, and have to totally change your mental approach to be able to shift from a really balls out short distance to, like you say, you ran with a lady for 7 hours. I can't even imagine running with anybody for 7 hours and either not just telling them to do one.
Well, that's it. We'll still speak to each other now.
That is, to me, that's mentally even a totally different place, regardless of the running. Even just talking to someone for 7 hours would be sort of a marathon in itself for me. So, I like the fact that you've just completely changed. Thrown something else that's totally left base.
I have to say it's a big part of my race planning strategy now, actually. Like I say, I've got this race coming up on Saturday, and I'm lucky now. I'm getting to the stage where I know lots of people who are in the race, probably 20 or 30 people at least that are racing it, and a lot of my thought is, and I've been having some quiet conversations with a few people about, well, what pace are you going at, so that I know I can spend 2-3 hours running with that person, and because the time just disappears.
Because to me, you sound so much more sociable than me, because that sounds like my idea of hell. And you'd just be like, I can't even comprehend. So for me, I've only done it to marathon distance. I've not gone beyond that, and I'm going to next year with the Comrades thing, and I'm going to have to venture into that place, and it will affect my pacing, because up to the marathon distance, I've pushed myself to maintain a relatively fast pace to go for the times, and I think once I lose grip of that, and just obviously I'll have to slow down to do double the marathon distance, because that just will have to happen, and I'd be foolish to think otherwise. But I don't know what it looks like for me yet. I don't know what it's like.
I know a few people have made that transition. As I say, for me, I kind of skipped over the marathon. Just I think I've only done 2 official marathons and few training runs that have that distance and longer, but I've only officially done 2 marathons and 5 ultras, I think.
but you see, you work out what you love, and you work out, and you've discovered that's what, and I do think such a lot of it's mental. So mentally, you almost need the longevity and the mental discipline and the challenge of those incredibly long races, and that is a totally different place to the focus for a marathon, and that is a totally different place for me from the mental, from the anxiety management of doing a 5k, for example. So I think the different mental aspects of the various distances, or the different types of race, or the different reasons for running, they can be so far apart, and it's a case of finding out where you are on that spectrum, and working out what you love and why. Whether I dip my toe into the ultra pond and realise actually I bloody love marathons, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that'll go, but it's not something I particularly ever anticipated or wanted to do. I can't see myself going massively into the ultra. I know 2 ladies that have very successfully made the transition from marathon to ultra. If you want us to put you in contact with them to have a chat with them, because they'll know much more about that transition than I do. I think it's fascinating, but I think also from a personal perspective, we're only we know what fully goes on inside here, and only you know how you go. For those distances, talking to one person, a few people for 7, 8, 9, whatever hours. I don't know what that is like for me just yet. I don't know where my head would be with it, but it's something that I guess I'll find out pretty soon, because that's gonna be happening.
Well, one of my friends who I was running some of the time with on the Hardmoor 60, she's also called Rachel, and she finished that in about, I don't want to do a disservice now, it was about 12.5 hours, I think, just under 12.5 hours, and she won't mind me saying that she talked the entire time.
No way.
I wasn't running with her the whole time, but she was
to whom about what?
Anybody about anything.
I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't have enough to say to anybody for 12.5 hours about what.
Everyone that that has run with her knows her for this. And she finished 3rd lady. She did really well.
Wow.
She's fast. She beat me. I met her on another race, Wharfdale 3 Peaks, which is 22 miles, very hilly. And again, we ran together for about an hour on that, had a good chat, and I couldn't keep up with her.
Oh, she had a good chat with you. Right? You had a good listen, and Rachel had a good chat. Sorry, Rachel, don't even but that sounds... Yeah. You see, I wouldn't mind that. I'd be fine to listen for that period of time. I'm not so sure where anybody could do that distance and do the chatting thing.
It's incredible. I think if she wasn't chatting, she could probably do it in half an hour faster.
Has anybody suggested to her, you know what, if you just save that energy, how about you knock a clean hour off your time and just be quiet for the last half?
She's very incredible runner.
But you see, I love hearing stories like this, because that's her thing, it's what she loves, it's her character, it's her personality. She's discovered the running for her, and she knows a place and where running fits into her life, into her, just into who she is. And I think that's what all of us kind of should be doing. It's working out where it fits for you and what it looks like. And for some people, I mentioned the event on Saturday over at Sheffield, and there's such a massive community feel around the Sheffield Hallam Park Run, and we did an event on the Friday evening, and there's a real sort of a buzz about that particular park run. And so many people, they have that's their thing. They go along to a park run every Saturday, they're wearing the 100 or the 500 t-shirts, and they do that religiously every week, and it's their community. They go for coffees afterwards. They're volunteering when they're not running it. For them, it's the community feel of that, and it's the helping and giving back in a sense, and that's their thing. So I think it just depends where, for me, when I was cracking on with my running after the story within the book finishes, and I went on from there, I used to just love half marathon distance. That became something that was just, and I hated 10Ks. I'm doing one this weekend, but I can't stand them. I hated 10Ks. I loved the half marathon distance. And I just used to do loads of those because that's a distance that felt good to me. And that's where sort of my natural sort of running economy tended to work for me, and I guess that was translated into marathon distance. But it's just working out where it fits for each of us, and actually, like I'm going to do next year with the trying the ultra thing, it's just trying something different, and mix it up a little bit. And for me, I've gone and done the cycling thing as well, so that's mixing, chucking other things in the duathlon side of things, but try something different and working out what you love, and if you love it, crack on. If you don't, do what you love. Dead simple. It is.
I think it's a really good message as well. We'll try to get these little sort of soundbite messages on these podcasts.
Well, feel free to copyright that one, paste it, and crack on. I'll put a quote in the second book about that. But it should really be very simple. And I think where it became complicated for me and sort of difficult and in a very negative place, thankful I pulled myself back from that and found the simplicity again, because it should be fun, it should be enjoyable, and it should be a really healthy part of, and a big part of my life as it is many others.
Well, I think that's it's probably a really good positive note to end the conversation on. It's and it's a similar message to what we've had from, as I was saying before we started, we've had people on that do 400 meters, one of the fastest in the country,
which is incredible as well.
Which is incredible. People on that do Spartathlon, run for Team GB in Spartathlon, and equally, and Hakan, that does the 400 meters, his message was always run with a smile on your face. And Carl that does Spartathlon.
How about Grimace? Would he go for Grimace as well?
It's always smile. And Carl was saying, running makes you happy. Do it's very similar to what you...
And if it doesn't, or if it stops making you happy, do something about it.
Because he's probably a personal trainer's worst nightmare. He never runs up hills, ever. He runs every day. Random distances, whatever he feels like. Whenever he feels like.
I like the sound of him actually. It sounds really something like me. Is he me? Just in a male form.
But you see, he just does what makes him happy, and because he's happy,
good for him.
He gets so much more sort of. It's much easier physically when you're relaxed and you're happy, and again, Lisa, who's been on, who's on an incredible journey. She turns 50 in December this year, and she's trying to get to her 50th marathon and ultra on her 50th birthday.
Wow. Oh my God, that's incredible. And
she is, by her own admission, a back of the pack runner.
But that is an amazing achievement.
She's been timed out on an event recently, which was one of her 50, and she's had to find another event to replace it.
Oh my God.
Who
are these people? They need to write books.
Well, this is what we're trying to do on the podcast.
Stories, isn't it? Of course,
these are.
And these are fascinating stories.
They're interesting, really interesting stories of what you would often just call ordinary runners. But
of which we all are.
Yes.
You know, we all are, and we all have a story, and I think that's the thing. And parts of people's story, if anybody is able to relate to, you know, I can relate to parts of your story, you can relate to parts of mine, and that's the point. I think it's sharing those, so that other people can think, actually, yeah, you know, that bit resonates with me, and oh God, I'm getting a bit like that, and I'm putting a bit of pressure on, and actually, God, I'm going down that road, and maybe I should. And I think if nothing else, sharing stories like this, it can help other people to maybe identify where they are on the spectrum of things, and to, you know, just to make choices accordingly, and it helps surely to hear other people who and ironically for me, I was such an introspective, insular kind of person. I never imagined I'd be able to be vocal and have a voice and share my story, because I was the person that lived with invisibility for so many years. That's what I knew, and that's what I was comfortable with. So the fact that I'm here talking about it and having written about it is such a dichotomy from the person that I grew up to be. Again, that's a big thing for me, because I feel actually, you know, I am able to share my story. I do have that confidence to be able to do that, and there will be parts that people can relate to, and there'll be parts that they can't, but that's the point. It's sharing it so that other people can cherry pick and do what they want with it, and you know, enjoy running as I have, and or whatever sport, crack on, take part, and you know, listening to other people's stories, I think is a brilliant way to feel a part of a community. Yeah,
no, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you
very much, Rachel.
I really enjoyed the chat. Thanks, Kev.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for listening to Running Your Stories. Please like, subscribe, follow us. You can find us on Facebook, Android, iPhone. You can check out our YouTube channel. We put all these podcasts out on video. If you're just listening to these, you can also catch the videos there. Please send us some feedback. runningyourstories@gmail.com. We're always happy to hear from you. We have some other terrific shows lined up. I'll be running in the White Rose Ultra myself in the coming weekend, and there are a number of friends of the show going to be at that event, so we'll see what material we get out of that, and we'll be back with you soon. Keep listening. Thank you very much.